Assalamu alaikum, my good viewers and students. Again, I'm here with the new video for MPHIL English Linguistics. We can say it MPHIL Applied Linguistics, MPHIL Linguistics, because almost the syllabus is the same. Last time I discussed first three questions of chapter 1 for the first paper, methods in applied linguistics, research methods in applied linguistics. So I want to share the screen to show you where I discuss what is the fourth question I'm going to discuss now. You can see that this I have shared the screen. You can see last lecture number 3 for MPhil, I discussed why do we need research questions, where do research questions come from, research questions, topics, and puzzles. Okay. Now today I'm going to have another question number 4 for first chapter. Okay, types of research questions. This is the fourth question. Types of research questions, research questions in linguistics. The first chapter is research questions in linguistics. The first paper is research methods in linguistics. Okay, that is MPhil course code ELING 701. So three questions I have already discussed in my lecture 3. Now this is lecture 4 for MPhil English students, MPhil linguistics students, types of research questions. This is actually I'm going to discuss today, okay? And now again, I'm having, you see, again, I'm having, okay, you can see now, this question is very important in many aspects. Types of research questions. That's the fourth question of chapter 1. Research questions in linguistics. That's the chapter 1 for research methods in linguistics, paper 1. To illustrate some possible types of research questions, let us take the topic of, for example, beliefs of Pakistani primary school teachers about foreign language teaching and acquisition. Within this, your questions might be one or might be 2 or 3 or more than that. Okay, for example, when I was in the UK for my studies, I was asked to do the same project in UK schools. So I suggested questions. Do French teachers working in UK primary schools agree with the teaching of French to year 6 primary school children? What reason do French teachers working in UK primary schools give for including the teaching of French to year 6 children in the curriculum? Okay. Next question was, what reason do French teachers working in UK primary schools give against the teaching of French to year 6 primary school children? Okay. And next question was, how do UK primary school teachers of French believe year 6 children best learn French? Okay. And then next question, what is the range and diversity of beliefs of UK primary school teachers French in relation to the teaching of French to year 6 students or year 6 children? Okay, and the last question was, why do UK primary school teachers of French hold these beliefs? Okay, so how many questions I found, you understand? So you can note from these questions, research questions, that these research questions are formulated as interrogatives. What are the interrogatives we use in research questions? Do, what, how, why? Or maybe other questions might start with is, are, am, when. I think these are actually they're starting with. So where, who, to. Okay, that's many ways to ask a research question. The interrogatives suggest different sorts of research questions. Okay, whereas if I say how, when, where, what, is, are, do, does, and to what extent may be descriptive. For example, why is clearly, okay, explanatory. Okay, you need to consider carefully, you need to consider uh, what you want to ask, often more than one question. Okay, if you are a student of MPHIL, maybe 2-3 questions enough for, maybe 4 questions enough for your MPHIL project. But if you are a student of PhD, maybe 7, 8, 9 questions. Okay, and the sequence of questions is also very important. It depends according to your variables. Okay, it may not be possible to address one research question without having answered a previous one. Okay, so that's because they're connected. If you understand conceptual framework, research questions are connected to each other. Okay, for example, in many research project research question one is descriptive, does, starting with does. Okay, and research question number two is explanatory. Why does? It's explanatory. Okay, uh, when I turn to question of explanatory research questions, as I have already discussed, now I'm explaining again. Novice researchers often wish to address an evaluative research question. Evaluative research questions are different types, okay? Such as, what is the best method of teaching listening in blah, 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 okay? Or should EFL teachers be discouraged from using the students, okay, L1 in blah, 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 blah. So this type of questions are evaluative questions. The difficulty with such research questions, aside from the problem of operationalizing them, if you can see, is this problem, this is that they tend to entail something like according to who, what, or if to be achieved or not, that's the question here, or even a particular, okay, I think the side term, for example, if you can, I have studied Lito Sereti. He has written a very good book. Lito Sereti is very famous in research questions. My feeling is that evaluation coming out of, because I'm now discussing evaluative question. That's why I'm asking for evaluative, okay, evaluation. So my feeling is that evaluation comes out of the finding of descriptive research questions, okay, that can be best expressed in the form of recommendations, implications, perhaps in a discussion section or chapter. For example, the question, what is the best method of teaching listening, blah, 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 teaching listening in, blah, blah, blah. Okay, teaching listening in grade 10, grade 5, like this. Because these are questions of linguistics that might be addressed not through a research question, okay, but rather through a discussion of finding research question. For example, what are teachers and students' views? For example, is there any correlation between method and test results here? So recommendations, however, still need to be expressed with caution, in part because of the problem of establishing causality between use of a new method of listening and improved results in a listening test, okay? And the issue of test validity, okay? Because we are discussing listening test, okay? In addition to a categorization of such research questions, as I have already told you, what are the research questions I told you? Descriptive, explanatory, evaluative, okay? Cutting the research cake in other ways allows still other distinctions to be made and referred to explicitly in the dissertation, because you are writing a dissertation of MPhil or thesis, we can say, okay? But I think something, I will tell you some things that are included in your dissertation, okay? So your dissertation is very important. If it is 20,000 word, 30,000 word, no problem. For example, primary or secondary. Quite simply, some research question might be more important than others in terms of focus of the study, or simply the quality and quantity of data collected, selected, or elicited to address a given research question. That's why I say primary, okay, or secondary. Then main, or we can say contributory, okay. It may not be possible to answer your main research question until an earlier contributory research question has been answered. That's very important. That's why I call it main and contributory research question, okay. For example, a contributory research question such as, does blah, blah, blah happen? Allow two further alternative main research questions to be addressed. For example, if does blah blah blah, if blah 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 happens, why might this be? Okay, blah blah blah. And if X does not happen, why might this be? Dash 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 question mark. Okay, so this method I read in the book of Andrews, a very famous book he has written about research questions in linguistics. Next one is overarching subordinate, or we can say subordinate, not the main question. Two or more research questions might be grouped hierarchically under a higher one, which together they address, for example, overarching research question. What are some differences in the ways a given political event, for example, is reported in newspaper X and newspaper Y? Okay, the other example, subordinate research question one. Okay, this is the overarching research question I discussed. But now subordinate question number one, how are the social actors in each newspaper reported normalized? So subordinate research question number two, which report uses the greatest proportion of agentless passive verb constructions? These are the subordinate questions, okay? And what was the overarching research question? What are some differences in the way a given political event is reported in newspaper X and newspaper Y? So that's the value of overarching questions and subordinate questions. The overarching questions cannot be operationalized, okay? I understand, but cannot be operationalized through the two subordinate research questions. You try to understand. I discussed overarching question, and then two is a subordinate question. So that's why I'm repeating it. Okay, now we go to new one. Empirical and methodological, or you can say methodological, theoretical. What I say? Research question. What is the category? Empirical, methodological, theoretical. Okay, this is the same. While your research questions will probably be largely aimed at producing empirical findings concerning, for example, part of the language system, an aspect of language use, language learning, teaching. It can be language learning or language teaching. You may also be interested in investigating methodological process itself. An example of methodological research question might be, for example, are field notes made by researchers an effective way to investigate code switching in workplace talk by migrant hotel workers? So that's the first research question. Okay, and second, I will discuss what might effectiveness depend on here, question mark. Another possibility might be another research question, for example, can critical discourse analysis, CDA, critical discourse analysis, be usefully applied to talk of preschool children, question mark. So don't feel that you must have methodological research questions, okay? However, if you are doing something innovative or otherwise interesting methodologically, for example, combining two approaches which are not usually combined, this could constitute an intellectual contribution of your study. So that's very important about these types of questions. If so, it may be worth promoting this aspect of your methodology, okay, to the status of research question. Now we come to the theoretical research questions, because I discussed three. Theoretical research questions are likely to refer both to theoretical concepts and their deployment in empirical research. Okay, illustration of a theoretical research is, what is theoretical framework within which Hong Kong children writing in English can be analyzed and described, question mark. This is the theoretical question, okay? What is a theoretical framework within which Hong Kong children's writing in English can be analyzed and described, question mark, though he does not label this as such. Try to understand, I'm talking about Andrews. This question was given by Andrews in his book written on research questions. The next category, what can be the next category? So the next category is researcher generated, participant generated. Researcher generated or participant generated questions, research questions. Of course, almost all research questions are researcher generated. But this begs to the question of the role of your research participants, assuming you are not doing text-based research, okay? Are you? I think Cameron, in his book, he pointed doing research on with or for your participants. Relatedly, same Cohen. Cohen is a very famous research author of research, many research books. He wrote his new book came in 2017. Proposed that the researcher asks not only what are the research questions, but also who decides what the questions will be. Okay, that's very who decide. You are the researchers. You decide according to the context of your research, and can participants add their own questions? Yes. Someone doing research for their MPhil dissertation or PhD thesis, MPhil dissertation or PhD thesis or MA dissertation thesis, or may have less space to explore the possibility of research for participants than a researcher who has received a grant to do exactly that. A researcher with a grant can do more. However, MA or PhD researchers are often not accountable to a grant awarding body. You try to understand. Maybe it depends. It varies from institution to institution, university to university. Some universities you are getting grants, some universities you are not getting grants. It depends. When I was in my PhD study, my last PhD fee of the last semester was funded by the university. They offered me, I said, okay, and they funded it. And this may be precisely the time when you can consider how to work with research participants and perhaps how to address these participants' own concerns. Okay, that's very important. The next one is empirical or speculative research type of research questions. Some research questions, the why questions. As before I told you why, WHY, they're starting, for example, may need to be speculative rather than empirical, perhaps informed by the answers to empirical questions in combination with your own professional or other insights. I think these sets of distinctions, as I already explained you before, suggest your research question can and should constitute a coherent whole that is be explicitly related to each other. Both sequence and hierarchy are important. Sequence and hierarchy in your research question are very important. Most obvious, as suggested, might be two research questions. The first research question, number one, okay, being descriptive, for example, to what extent? The second research question, number two, explanatory, why? Okay, alternatively, as shown an overarching question, as I told you before, research question one may not itself be operationalizable, but may be operationalized via two or more subordinate questions. Okay, subordinate research questions, I mean. Research question 1A, research question 1B, okay, subordinate. Unless I say 1A, 1B, okay. The relationship between the research questions should be clear. You should try to understand according to your variables. I told you, when you make your conceptual framework, okay, that's according to the variable, okay, according to your research study. So, but this sort of organization is also important for you as an MPhil student, okay? Once you have created this coherent structure, you'll be able to see if some of your research questions are basically the same and hence should probably be combined, or if one is in fact a sub-research question of another. Andrews, as I told you, I read his book on research questions, research methodology book written by Andrews, makes the useful suggestion here of writing each research question on a separate strip of paper and organizing them accordingly. Okay, right. What Andrews says. The latest book of Andrews came in, the first book he wrote in 2003, but the latest book came in 2021. Here, the latest book with some other authors, where he has written an experiment with moving the questions so that they seem to make sense in relation to each other. Does one of them seem like the main question? Are some more general or more specific than others? How do they stand in relation to each other? Can some of them be omitted or focused or added to? I gave you the example of my PhD research in the last lecture, number 3 for MPhil. I said that I had 5 questions. So my supervisor was saying you have to think about more questions. But when I went on literature review, I came to know there are other two questions, and they were the main question, not subordinate questions. So sometimes your study produce you the best one. Okay, now to wind up the situation for today's lecture, two final points about the wording of research question. First, every content word in research question matters. Okay, that's very important for you to operationalize your research question. You will need to know exactly what each word is to mean as far as your research project is concerned. A working definition that is for the purpose of this dissertation, your MPhil thesis, your PhD dissertation, your master dissertation. Okay. Secondly, and more generally, as I told you in the first lecture, I read Mason, his latest book on research methodology. It reminds us that we should ask of our research questions. Would anyone but me understand them? It is crucial that the answer is yes. Okay, especially if aspects of your study are to be replicable. Okay, if others cannot understand your research question, it is worth considering whether they are in fact formulated in a way which is clear enough for you to address them properly. Because if you understand, others can also understand, but I think you know your study better. That's why you can understand them better. The other, if they want to understand your research questions, they have to dip into your study, they have to read the whole study, your thesis, and then they will understand the research questions. What are they? Are they evaluative? Okay. Are they theoretical? Are they speculative? What type of they? So it's enough for today for paper one research methods in linguistics and chapter one research questions in linguistics, and question number four I finished. Okay, and question number five, inshallah, next lecture you have to wait for lecture number five. For question number five will be how many research questions you should have in your MPhil thesis, MA thesis, your PhD dissertation. Okay, and I will say thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye bye. Please don't forget to subscribe this channel. Okay, thank you.